Welcome to the Growing the Future podcast, where our future is always bigger than our past. Today is a very special episode. It's part 2 of a series that we've got interviewing our patriarch, Harvey Aberhart, who's really the foundational father figure, literally and figuratively, of what we base our core values on, how we go about business and living our lives. So it's a great moment of time to be captured as he's approaching his 70th birthday here shortly. Still in damn good health and strong as a horse and outworking everybody on the farm. Hey, Harvey?
I don't know about that, but they're doing pretty good, yeah.
He's a modest guy. So also with me today is my co-host, Terry. How you doing, Terry?
I'm doing awesome. Excited to be chatting about farming and family and family feuding or whatever it may be.
Family Feud. Turn it into a game show. But yeah, we're going to talk about Terry's entrance on the farm and how they've been working together, and a little bit about our working together with Aberhart Ag, but also to add some more spice to the Aberhart mix. The Aberhart recipe today is none other than the next generation Holden Aberhart.
Yep.
What's up, dude?
Not much.
Yeah.
Just excited to see him talk about working with him.
Are you excited to hear your dad talk?
Yep.
Extra credit
Paid
for
him
that.
to say that.
Yeah.
Slipping him a 50, buttering his bread, old country style. Well, I guess we'll pick it up where we left off. We kind of left it off talking about everything that happened up to the point where we kind of figured out I'm not going to be taking over the farm for various reasons. Because I wrecked the shop. If you listen to episode 1, and I couldn't weld a bead, and you're out. But no, it's kind of funny because we're just talking about how we all ended up working at John Deere at various times in our career. I worked there for 13 years. Dad worked there for 7 years, and I think Terry, you worked there as a mechanic for 4 or something like that.
Yeah, about 4 years. Yeah.
Got your journeyman's. But there was this evolution that took place whereby I kept selling John Deere, but you guys started working together on the farm. And so I guess, Harvey, you want to talk a little bit about how Terry came to be working on the farm more and more, and how that went?
Yeah, that's probably a good question. But I guess when he was at John Deere, I guess as a mechanic, I was actually at John Deere at the time too, and we were just doing a part-time thing, and then I guess he ended up getting interested in the Agritran thing, and he kind of convinced me that he should get involved with that, which I thought was a good thing, because rather than maybe in my case I was selling and equipment, I guess, and when you're buying and selling equipment, it's not always a full interest in the farm. So when he got interested in Agritran, and he was always really interested in agronomy and everything as it was. So at that point, he more or less got into the farm full time, except for the Agritran thing on the side, which was a little easier to manage than working as a mechanic and tied to 8 to 5 job. So at that point, we weren't that many acres at that time, but he was gung ho to go, and like I say, in a lot of ways he was a better farmer than I ever was, because I had an interest in the farm, but I wasn't passionate about it. I was happy to do it on a part-time basis. So then he came and went full-time at it, and then we had an opportunity to buy some land, which really was a tough decision for us at the time, because it sat there for quite a while before anybody bought it, and it's hard to imagine now why we would have even thought about hesitating, but that turned out to be a 10 quarters of land in one chunk, and then there was another 4 that came up right in the same area 2 years later. So I mean, that was 14 quarters of land that really gave us a chance that we needed more and more full-time work. And eventually he convinced me to quit what I was doing and come full-time. And quite frankly, I'm not sure how, I did it. When you're working at 2 jobs and then you quit, you kind of wonder how you ever got things done. And And I see that a lot in people. If you have a good job, especially if you have a good job, and they just don't know how they can go full-time farming. But a lot of times we miss when we're concentrating on something else, we're not there, or we could easily miss 30, 40, and nowadays 50 to 100 grand of stuff that you could miss on the farm, and your wage sometimes seems like it's really important, but I even see a lot of people now that have good jobs. They really hate to quit, but once they do, they find that they can just manage their farm a bit better, and they get better at it. And there's more revenue comes in the farm to help offset their loss of wages, I guess, from their second job. So.
Yeah, and I kind of remember a lot of that transition, pretty well. Dad and I were both working off the farm and farming, and one thing Dad's always was incredibly supportive of us and entrepreneurship, right? Like even when we were kids, I remembered he'd buy us pigs or chickens, or we were doing entrepreneurial stuff from the age that Holden was. At one point I was growing like 600 chickens and turkey ducks and blah 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 whatever. But and the same thing with you, Dan. I mean, when you came to the farm for a couple of years there, Dad was in the dealership. He got the custom sprayer for you to run, and we learned a lot of stuff about that. But I came to the farm full time in 2000, and it was really kind of a unique thing. I don't think it happens that way very often. It was a great opportunity for me to learn and grow, because Dad was managing the John Deere dealership, which was a pretty awesome gig and at the time, and I think he really enjoyed it. And I really wanted to farm full time because I felt like we were missing out at times, and I felt like the costs were getting so high that my job off the farm wouldn't matter. So I came to work on the farm full time in 2000. Lachelle and I moved from an acreage into Grandma's house because we knew we were going to be poor farmers for a while. So we wanted to save as much money as we can. And I started farming, and I kind of remember the first few years, I kind of jokingly just seem to remember this, but at the end of the year, Dad was upset because the chemical bill was so high, and we're not making enough money. So then the next year I cut back on the chemicals, and then he was pissed off because the fields were all weedy and they weren't very clean, and the crop wasn't that good. So I farmed for about 4 or 5 years, and the farm was growing. When I first came to the farm, it went from 1,500 to 3,000 acres. We rented some land, and then we had this opportunity to buy the land. And then I realized that, if I'm going to be a good farmer, I realized this pulling wrenches, the certain farms just grow great crops, and they do different things to get there, and they usually did work with agronomists and stuff. So I started trying to learn more about agronomy, and that's what led me to think about starting Agritrend. And over those 5 or 6 years, this situation in the dealership evolved where there was some money lost there, and a new partner came in, and then of course changes, and Dad essentially got moved over to salesman, and I could see that he wasn't as happy. In the dealership environment too, or the culture sometimes is, he'd come home at the end of the day, and I'd be all excited about something, and he'd just be like, well, we should just sell the farm. Or he probably listened to 10 guys come into the dealership that day and complain about how fertilizer prices are too high and they can't pay their bill and they're going broke, right? And so it's a lot about mindset and who you surround yourself with. So that was probably a lot of the type of mentality that he was exposed to all day, and it was hard. And so when we had that opportunity, I just thought wow, I always admired Dad for everything he's done, and the business person he is, and the relationships he had, and the respect that he had. And I felt like he wasn't getting the respect that he deserved, and it was hard to kind of see and watch. And I just thought we could do something really cool together. Let's just do it. And it was easy for me because there's no risk. It wasn't my equity in my lifetime that I built up. But I remember that was some interesting conversations going to Dad when he's worked off the farm all of his life. to say, hey, like, quit your job and come farming and we'll figure it out. And he did. I think the first years you were probably terrified, and I knew you weren't sure you were going to make it, but then slowly, that was part of one of the amazing things in the AgriTrend network. You went to the farm forum and you surrounded yourself with people that actually liked farming and were successful at it and were excited about it. And slowly over the years, it's definitely rubbed off on all of us, and especially Dad, because he's more passionate and excited about it than ever now. But that was kind of a really cool experience and journey for me, and working with Dad.
I'm kind of curious about the transition that took place from, you were at this relatively stable level of acres for probably almost like a decade or 15 years or something, right? Like you had 1,500 acres, 1,200, 1,500 acres almost as long as I was growing up.
Yeah.
But then you really accelerated that growth. I guess that's because Terry came home and was pushing, or how did that all look? When you started growing and getting more land, you were talking about that.
Yeah, so really what happened, I think it's from the 1,500 to maybe 3,000 to 4,000, it was slowly taking on a bit of rented land, and it was relatively easy. And I remember we were then involved with the Pike Management Group, and one of the things they said, like, if you're gonna go somewhere, you should be at 10,000 acres. That was the magic number. So I think we
solve that 10,000 acres is the mentality, right?
Yeah.
So we really,
until you get 10,000 acres.
we might have even moved up close to 5 slowly, and then we jumped from 5 to, or either 4 to 10 or 5 to 10. I can't remember. But that was a big jump, and then we spent the next 10 years using that as an excuse as why we were having such a struggle, because we.
This is why things are shitty.
It really was a tough move because we did a lot of acres, and then I think we bought some land in between there, and so it was a bit of a challenge. And then we expanded since, but we were a lot more prepared for the next expansion. We knew a lot. We were more educated, and we knew what to do. So.
What size was the farm when you figured that it was enough to come home for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say we were probably 10,000 acres then, right?
7,500.
No, we were about 5.
5 then.
We were about 5 when I started. That was 2006 when I started Sure Growth. And he came home, and then so we grew fairly. Like when I first came home, we doubled to 3,000 acres, and then we kind of grew, in a pace to about 5, and then shortly after I started AgriTrend and Sure Growth, we got up to 7,500 acres. We kind of took a leap there, and then we took a leap shortly after that from 75 to 10,000.
And that wasn't very long in between, I don't think.
Yeah, it was only a couple of years, I think.
So what were you working towards going home, or I guess maybe if things had been different at the John Deere dealership, that might have been a different trajectory.
Might have been. I wasn't really, I didn't have a goal set or anything. It just kind of happened, I guess. Yeah.
Well, you didn't start setting goals till Terry came home and
Right.
started making you fill out all these
right.
sheets and these
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
What's your big?
Yeah.
What's your 3 month, 1 year, 5 year,
Yeah.
10 year, 25 and 100 year goal? But
Yeah.
it's a very, very interesting perspective for me, because I know when we were scraping bottom with the big ship that sometimes Aberhart Ag is, we went through our own challenges and we're all in a better place now. But I was often reminded of some of the challenges that you guys had on the farm. And Terry, despite being my younger, more handsome, richer, taller, younger brother, had actually kind of gone ahead of me in business and experienced some sleepless nights when you guys, I think it was it 2009? And you guys were about 7,500 acres or so, and you had that frost, or 9,000. There was some sort of event there, or there's a couple events there where things were pretty tight, and you guys were having some serious conversations. And from Terry's point of view, like he said, for a young guy's equity, it was largely your guys' equity. That was on the
At
line.
that
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that frost was in August of 2004, and that was a devastating frost that we almost we actually bought the 10 quarters of land in 2002, and then we got that big
Right.
frost in 2004, and that pretty much just about set us back to we almost went broke at that time because I mean everybody got hit, it wasn't only us, it was everybody, but it was tough because we had just expanded with some purchases of some land in 2004, and then by 2006 we ended up buying 4 more quarters, so I'm not sure how we managed it, but we
Good
did.
banker.
And yeah, so
Some
that was
sleepless nights away.
yeah, for sure, and we really haven't had a devastating frost since like that. Like it hit everywhere from through Saskatchewan to Dauphin, Manitoba. They didn't get frost in Dauphin that night for some reason, but that was early in the year. And it was I think the 19th of August or something. It was unbelievable how little grain came out of a big crop.
It's I just remember that, yeah, in 2004. I mean, I was so new to farming. I always used to joke fondly, of course, that I would create all the bills and Dad would pay them, which was a great scenario for me.
I did that. I didn't even farm.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, 2004 was pretty tough, and I was just thinking back now, like at the time, I didn't even know what a financial statement was. I didn't know that business plans exist, and at that time, it was really tough on the farm, and we had to go through like a debt restructuring. Like we didn't know we needed to do that. We were told by the bank that we needed to do that, and that's when we first started working with Larry Parrott, and he went through and did a business plan for us and looked at all of our numbers and said, this is kind of what we need to do, and without going, like we were forced into that process. Like we wouldn't have been able to continue on without going through that. But after going through it, we learned so much and realized, okay, there's a lot more to, farming than just growing the crop. And then Larry asked us if we wanted to continue on, he could do business plans for us and projections. And so that was our first, for me anyways, my first kind of learning and starting to understand the financial side. Because, before then it was just driving tractors and having fun and spending money kind of
So
thing.
how is that transition? Like, we poked and prodded you for what were you thinking and what was your goals and what was your strategy and this and that, but it sounded like you just put your head down and went to work, which I think is a common mentality in agriculture.
Yeah.
But there's been a sea change here at Aberhart Farms that you've been a part of now. You're filling out these forms, you're doing the impact filters, you're getting all strategic. Tell me a little bit. A lot of that, I guess, came from AgriTrain, but tell me a little bit about that transition where you went from just being tactical every day from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. to being strategic like you are now.
Well, I guess that's mostly Terry got into that more so than I did.
So Terry forced you into it.
Well, yeah, I would say it wouldn't have been. I probably still wouldn't do it today, quite frankly. But
Yeah.
but I mean, like you said, having somebody like Larry doing our projections, and we continue to do it and still are to this day with different people. But really, that was a really big thing to have a plan, and especially when two of us are working together with maybe some different, two different visions. Like I mean, I'm looking at, slowing down or still am. But I mean,
How's that going?
but and then he wants to grow. So it's been nice to have that person in the middle that could say, okay, this is a good idea, and this is why this is a good idea, and maybe this isn't, and this is why. And actually, I've seen it even working with bankers and stuff, like they just wish that at that time especially, they wished so much that they could have more people have a plan for the following year, a plan ahead, rather than bring their stuff in the shoebox and say, this is what we want to do and can I buy more land, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been very helpful for us to have planning, as we never did that at first. So
One of the things that I see as a big change too is, you're very much oriented towards do it yourself.
yeah,
where Terry is more like, who can do this for me.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine you'd have this kind of a team on the farm, or you'd be delegating all this stuff? Or?
No, I wouldn't imagine, because I mean, I was working off the farm. For me to imagine having, full-time staff on top of me working on the farm,
You have to work a lot of day jobs to pay everybody else.
you would have to. That's exactly right. So now, my chance of going back to work, I'd have to have 10 jobs to. If we had a bad year, you couldn't have enough jobs.
You have to be a lawyer or a doctor.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, I think I always love how Dad talks about now. He's like, back when I grew up and first started farming, whoever plowed the most in a day got ahead, right?
And drove the straightest.
And now that's not the case, right? You gotta work smarter, not harder. And I always, love that analogy. One of the things that I vividly remember working when you talked about the adversity there, I think a lot of us go through adversity in any entrepreneurial business. But when we had just grown, like the first year we expanded to 10,000 acres. I think it was 2008, and we knocked one out of the park. It was just awesome. We had one of the best crops, and the prices were good, and it was just awesome. And then we went into a cycle of not so awesome, and we had 2 years in a row that were really devastating. The first year was the biggest loss we ever experienced, and the second year was worse. And I didn't think that we would see that 2 years in a row, and I remember that was just after we started. This year actually is going to be our 10th anniversary of having a strategy meeting where we brought in like Rob Syke and different guys, and the first one was Dad, I think myself and Eldon and Rob, and now there's probably like 10 or 12 people at those meetings. But anyways, it was just a couple years after we started that process, and honestly, I wasn't sure whether we were gonna make it. And I was old enough, or a little bit older and wiser, and realizing that, and Mom and Dad are a few years older, that we were potentially at risk of jeopardizing their life savings. And there was probably 2 months of laying awake all night wondering if we were going to make it, and feeling like it was your fault. This was really, really difficult. And then we had planned this strategy session, and of course all the key stakeholders were there, the shareholders and Dad, and the banker Ron Boychuk at the time, amazing guy, and we had Darren Howie and Derek Squire, and we all got in a room and we worked through this plan, right, and what we needed to do, and we had a good plan. We thought we could make it. We knew what we needed to try to fix and work on, but the big caveat was we needed a fair bit of an extension from the bank. And I just remember that day going through it all, and at the end of the day, Ron Boychuk says, like, you guys are doing the right thing, you're working hard and working with great people, and you got a good plan, like, come in next week and we'll give her another go. And we did, and we were able to keep going, and that year was more successful, and we've still been learning and growing ever since. But it's kind of like those times that you go through, sometimes can be really hard, and you question, are you doing the right thing? And I know even you've felt that or experienced that at times in Aberhart Ag from the beginning to where we are today. But that was something that
that's been a big shift for you too, because before you were head down, you were doing what you got to do. It was tactical. Now you got this board of advisors that's telling you, well, actually, no, Harvey, you don't get that new tractor because you don't have room for capital purchases in the budget. How does that feel?
Horrible. No, actually, it certainly, it's good, because, like I say, if we have some ideas, it's good to have another person that's non-biased, that's not involved, to give us some advice. And yeah, I mean, and actually, as the time goes on, I care less about new equipment and stuff like that too, because it's not, just want equipment to do the job, and frankly, I don't get to sit on it anyway. So
Oh, come on, no.
so it's not I mean, it's not that I don't, but I mean, it's less important now than it was, and when you just have one piece and you can say that it's put in the shed and you're looking after it, and it's, you know, it's, like I said to to Donald the other day, I said, you know, we just want to pay for the use of the machine now. That's important of the job. The machine does the job, and that's what most business people do. That whether they're running a cat on the road or a scraper doing road work or whatever, it's got to pay for itself, and that's kind of what we have to look at.
Well, you've been in the iron business, and,
Yeah.
and you've been alive for a little while now, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, contrast what you started out with. You were talking about earlier in the first episode, your first combine that you
Yeah.
had to you know, the Lexion you got outside here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, like exactly. The first combines they were all pull types, but never anybody that would have a self-propelled would be considered a fairly well-off farmer. Now there's no pull types left, and yeah, I mean it's just changed so dramatically. Like I don't even know what we would have paid for that combine. Probably $6,000 or $7,000. I'm thinking. And
Cost of the buddy seat.
now you wouldn't be able to buy a tire for one of these. So
It's crazy.
yeah.
And all the technology, how have you found the technology? You just kind of embraced it all as you went along, or it's been a bit of a challenge uphill with some of the stuff, or?
I would say, you know, I would say somewhere in the middle. I've always, even when the first combines came out with the bubbles on them, I mean, I was one of the first guys to have them, and we were trying to collect some data, and we weren't as good at it as we thought we were, but some of the data that we collected earlier helped us going forward. Once Terry got into more data, we could put the stuff together that we did. So I always felt that I was, and sometimes it's a bit of a disadvantage when you want to be the first guy to try something, because it maybe doesn't work out and you buy something and it doesn't work out. But I would say I'm pretty open to, you know, to changes and all the technology. I think it's been good, really.
Yeah, you had a bit of an edge being on the inside with John Deere
Yeah.
as well there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one thing, just, you know, on the equipment side of things, that I see it's changing a little bit now, but there was a bit of a culture at the time, and still is in North America, that, you know, the pride of the farm was like the equipment that you drove, right? Like if you had new equipment and new combines and tractors, you must have been successful, right? And if you did, there must, you know, maybe you're not doing something so right, but right, this, I think that's changing a bit too now. But
What is your job description on the farm? Everybody's got SOPs and job description. What's your title, and what do you actually do on the farm to get that big wage?
Yeah, that's a good one, I guess. I still do a lot of, I guess what I consider manual stuff. I still do a lot of grain hauling, and you know, I like to think that I mentor some of the guys with some of the things, and gals, I guess, with some of the things they're doing, and help out with sort of keeping things in order. And there's a lot of, I'm a pretty handy guy, I guess I consider myself. I can fix plumbing, and I can fix electrical, and I can fix a lot of stuff to kind of keep things rolling, that we don't have to hire somebody to come in and do everything. So I do a lot of that, and yeah, that's kind of what I do. I still ran a drill all last spring, and maybe we'll do another one another year. Other than that, I don't really sit on the combine that much, just because I just don't want to be tied down to one spot. Maybe one day I will get there. I'll want to do that, but I kind of like to be free to go and make sure things are going at the bins good. And if you're sitting in one machine, you can't kind of sneak away for an hour. Whereas if you're hauling grain or something, you can skip away or fix something in the meantime or whatever. So I do a lot of everything still, really.
This year you didn't get to snowbird it, so you're hauling grain.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
How has it been farming with Holden on a scale of 1 to 10?
Great. I was told that I'm waiting for him to replace me, and now look at the size of him there, and his age is 14 years old. He's pretty much ready to take over for me, so I'm excited about that, because I guess maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he wants to do something. Maybe he wants to be an electrician. I don't know. But
Well, Terry was telling me a story about you asked Holden if he wanted to take over the farm or something. And,
Yeah, I was thinking
Oh, yeah.
about you. Yeah, you should tell that story when Holden was quite a bit younger, but you were
yeah.
talking about farming with him one time.
Yeah, like I asked him like if he was going to be a farmer, and I said, "Are you going to come and do some of the things we do and nothing to do?" And he said, "No, I just want to be going to the office like my dad and spending time in the office."
Well, that wasn't the story I was thinking of,
expecting
but it does remind me. I mean, you know, a few years ago he got that farm simulator, right, for the Xbox. So he's like, "Oh, this is really cool. Like, look at my tractor," and he's running the combine, and then he would get out of the, he'd dump the combine into the cart, and then he'd get out of the combine and get in the cart, and then he'd drive it over to the truck and dump it to the truck, and then drive the truck to the elevator and dump it, and that was all really cool. And then it was probably a couple months later, he came in again, he's playing on the farm simulator there, and he's just driving around in his truck, and he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I figured out, like, you can just hire people to drive the stuff, and now I just drive around in my truck all day like you do."
I may have said that.
I thought that was pretty
Do you
funny.
think you're more of a hands-on guy like your grandpa, or are you more of a delegator like your father?
No, I think I'm more hands-on. I don't think I could
Would you get
sit in an
Would
office.
you get somebody else to clean the bin, or would you clean the bin?
I'd go clean the bin. Because my saying
Thank
is...
goodness this is recorded on a podcast.
You know this is going on the internet.
Yeah, but my saying is, if you want something done good, you gotta do it yourself. So every time I'm doing...
You have been spending time with Grandpa.
Oh shit! The farm is actually going to shrink again after, because you're going to be doing everything yourself.
I always say that because every
Always
time
say
because every time I'm doing my chores and my dad goes, "Oh, well, you didn't do it right." I'm like, "Well, if you want something done right, do it yourself."
Oh, okay, this is like reverse psychology. This is actually, I get it.
The story I was thinking about though was you were telling me one time, and it was kind of a tearjerker for me. And Holden was probably like 5 or 6, and you were talking to him about if he was gonna farm, and then you told him he was gonna have to take over, and you were gone. You
Yeah.
remember that story? You should tell that one.
Yeah, I honestly I can't remember the what I said. I can't. You've kind of lost me there. I can't remember.
Yeah, so I'll share it then. I mean, it's just I remember you telling me this is probably 4 or 5 years ago. Holden was quite a bit younger, maybe even 10 years ago, and you were talking with them, and you got kind of choked up when you told me the story, and you were just talking about if he was going to farm when he gets older. And he's like, "Yeah, I think I might be interested in that." And then you said, "Well, that'd be great, because then you can take over and do all this stuff when I'm gone." And then all of a sudden you said Holden hung his head down, and he got really quiet, and he didn't say anything. And then you asked him, "Well, like, Holden, what's wrong? Like, I thought you said you wanted to farm." And he said, "Well, I do, but I wanted to farm with you. I want to be able to farm with you."
Yeah, right. I remember that now. But
And I just remember when you told me that story, it was
Yeah.
really cool. And I think maybe that's one of the things that I like to kind of talk about a little bit, is just farming with family and stuff. And sometimes it's a challenge, but I mean, that's one of the things that I love the most about farming is and business really, is that we've been able to do it with family. And when I look out the window or out in the yard, and I see, especially, I remember all the fond memories that we had with grandparents and grandma and working on the farm, and when I see our kids out there working with you and learning from you, they don't learn from me because they just give me wisecrack responses, and you know how that goes with your kids, right? But it's just so heartwarming to see the family out there with the grandparents and learning stuff and mentoring and just doing stuff on the farm. I think that's one of the things that I love the most about farming.
Good story. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think we can all recognize for various reasons that it probably wasn't a fit for me on the farm. But it's crazy how we got to work together a little bit. With John Deere, that was good. We collaborated a little bit on the custom spraying business, but really, when when Aberhart Ag Solutions reared its ugly head in its infancy, you know, in 2015, for me, it was a fantastic opportunity to maybe work at arm's length, you know, because the fisticuffs only go so far at arm's, like, right? You can only,
Yeah.
you know, just enough distance. There's no black eyes. And you guys had a good dynamic on the farm, right? That was a good fit. But all of a sudden I was in the mix, and I don't know, maybe you want to share that story a little bit about how that happened and got going, and all what crazy stuff's happened with Aberhart Ag from your point of view.
Yeah, so you're just thinking on the Aberhart Ag side of how
Aberhart Ag, so
Yeah.
yeah, 2015.
Yeah, well, I guess really that all started with when of course Terry was involved with Agritrend, and Neil Weens had this what you call sulfur, I guess, and he wondered how he could sort of get it into the rest of the world, you might say, provinces. So then I guess since I'm sure that what happened is that Neil talked to maybe Rob Syke or somebody from Agritrend, and they knew that Terry was into a lot of stuff with agronomy and what have you. So he brought a sealer of this stuff, put it on the table here, and showed it to us, and then we decided to try it out on our own farm. That was the first beginning of it, and then we thought, then he wanted somebody to market it, so that's when we thought, you were in the middle of another position that you weren't sure you were going to stay with. So we thought, well, this is a good opportunity. You got nothing to lose. You might as well start working for that.
Nothing to lose.
So there you go.
Aberhart
Something
Ag, nothing to
integrity and
lose.
reputation.
Should be our tagline, nothing to lose.
And really, that's how it started. And quite frankly, you know, basically you took the bull by the horns and you went out and you did a lot of marketing and you did a really good job, and it got us where we are today. Really, that's the way I see it. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is one of those things where you see me and Terry working together. You see how much advice he's given me on the daily, right? It's really good when it flows that way, you know. It's hard. No, anyways, I won't bust his balls too hard about not being able to take my advice. But I guess you've seen how we work together. How did you see that dynamic, you know, or I guess from the beginning of it to where we are today, I guess it's come a long ways too, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's come a long ways. Like, we started out really pretty simple. It was really a simple business. You just did the marketing. We followed along and helped you where we could, and then it kind of turned into a little bit of a challenge when we started, you know, collecting money and stuff like that, which worked out fairly well. But it became a bigger business than what we thought it would. And now today it's come along pretty good, and you know, sales have been decent for especially the last couple of years, and it's been good, and there's more opportunities coming our way. So
Yeah.
There's got to be some times I'm just thinking, you know, in the early days, I mean, you know, Dan and I talked at different times about, you know, maybe him coming back to the farm, and actually, you know, we've always had a pretty good relationship, and I've always had a great relationship with Dad. But one thing I think we both realized when we started the business together, you know, we're both full grown adults and have opinions, and I'm definitely glad that we decided to build another business together, work together in that fashion. I think it would have been really difficult, you know, come into the farm after been here for 15 years and try to figure out how to work with an older brother or whatever. But you know, I know we had some goals around, and these were largely, you know, the goals that you initially set out around strengthening family and the core values of the business. But I know through some of those first years and when things, you know, challenges come up in business, there were some times where we were probably struggling a bit. And I wonder, for Dad, like, you know, being the father in between two sons, you know, some of that must have been, you know, maybe hard to watch, or how do you help, you know, what was that like for you when you seen us going at it a little bit once in a while?
How's it like being in business with a son that you can't tell nothing to? Ever.
Oh, I think I don't really have any regrets. I mean, there's always a little bit of challenges with any business, and there was times when I wish I would have said that I wish I wouldn't have seen a sulfur, like a sulfur, but
Oh, well, you heard that a few
But-
times, yeah.
for the most part, you know, I think it's a good learning curve for us all. And actually, the first time we ever started with sulfur, the first year that we had it, I actually asked Terry if there's some way that we could send the rest of it back, because I couldn't get it out of the spreader. We had a double belt in our spreader that was narrow, but it was really just a learning curve to figure out how to run the machine and stuff. There was a time when I actually thought, how do we get the rest of the stuff off the ground and get it back to Alberta?
Well, I remember it's kind of like your story about, paying Dan $1,000 to stay home. When we first started the business, a big part of it was the spreading and logistics, right? And so we bought a spreader, and Dan was gonna manage the spreading, and we hired that guy. Remember, you send him to class 1 training, and he was stressed out about his tests, and hit the ditch and lost his license. And
We sent a guy to get his so my first employee in business, right? These are big things in my own business. Well, really my first business, my first employee. God bless that guy, because the hard lessons came hard and quick, right? Spent like a month or 2 calibrating, training him. Like, I don't know how many pan tests we did, right? And this was going to be the guy. He's going to build the custom operation. He's going to accelerate our growth. He's going to be my right hand. He's going to be yin and my yang, like Batman and Robin. Write the check, send him off to get his class 1, right? I'm waiting to hear how his test results. No answer. I talked to him on Wednesday. Everything was good. Friday rolls around. I'm like, didn't hear. Did he pass? How did he make out? Phone in. He never showed up. He never showed up for the test. I'm like, what planet are we on here? Okay, so I tried to phone his cell phone. No answer. He's just gone incommunicado. Next week, I finally start calling the emergency number, which happened to be his girlfriend at work, like at a daycare or whatever, and nailed that down and found out. And so he did contact me in the end. Sent him to class 1 training. He comes back with the DUI.
Yeah. Not the expected outcome.
Let's just say we made slight improvements in the team since then.
Yeah.
I mean, the team's incredible now.
I think there was a bit of a shift in focus and unique abilities shortly after that. And I was like, okay, Dan, you just go back to Brandon and sell stuff, and we'll worry about the equipment and spreading.
That's
and
right.
People.
Yeah, we got our lanes clear, and that was a really big deal. But I remember too, we didn't even know how much Aberhart Ag was going to take off. So we were thinking of other jobs that I could potentially make myself useful to the community for. And one of them was being an equipment consultant, because, me and my buddy Marty always thought that'd be fruitful. And so it's like, one of the things that I can do to make myself valuable to everybody is help you guys with iron. I've been around a little bit. I've sold iron for 13 years. We'll try and get in the middle of 2 Aberharts. Making a purchasing decision on a frickin' tractor from Nick Elitions is like trying to take a piece of steak away from, Pitbull. And that did not go well. I had to back out of that, like just back right out of that situation. Don't get in between a man and his iron. And, I just realized, hey, we're going to have to keep our lanes clear here, and it's all good. But no, you guys supported me through all kinds of amazing and horrible times, like wild extremes. And now, we've it's kind of like Elon Musk's rocket, like, it's exploded many times before it hit the pad, but that's kind of expected. That's part of the growth and testing of your abilities. Well, hard for me to digest the fact that you've been in business for 20 years. I really had not. And Harvey's been in business for 40 years, 60 years. I have not. So, but my plan now is, I spent 45 years of my life taking money from mom and dad. Now I'm hoping you'll get a little dividend every year from Aberhart Ag, for another 45, as we turn the corner here in our family history. And I think, 2 things for me. The opportunity to work with family has been extraordinary. It's been awesome. But also the opportunity to contribute to whatever healthy lifestyle choices mom and dad want to make, going forward, that Aberhart Ag might contribute to in whatever small way means a lot to me personally, because wasn't even that long ago. I don't want to say the amount or the circumstances, but I might have had to borrow money off mom and dad.
Like yesterday.
Been
So
around.
we talk about this a bit, but I'm sure, I think one thing that I always get asked a lot about is just working with family and business and how you do it all. And I think, one of the biggest challenges, HR challenges in the world is working with family at times, but at the same time, it can be one of the greatest opportunities and the most rewarding things. So I'm curious for you, Dan, what were and I know what some of them are, but I'm sure not everyone listening knows, but what were some of the things that were the hardest for you, coming into business halfway through your life with your younger brother and your father, and then on the same hand, what's been some of the most rewarding things?
I think the challenges are apparent in the approach that we take. Right, there's this dichotomy that we have, which can be really positive, but it can also be incredibly hard. And it's the example of where yesterday, for example, I was the one who was like, okay, I had clarity on a couple business issues, and when I laid it all out, you guys were like, whoa, he's thinking like a business person. And what happened? I was actually the sort of the opposing force to moving ahead. You wanted to go ahead with it. I'm like, what is going on here? For the last 5 years, I've been trying to charge ahead, and you've been the opposing force, but that's been the natural cadence and rhythm of our relationship, and Harvey kind of as well, but you and I more on a regular basis, where Harvey's been more on the bigger things, and he comes in and kind of says like, this is kind of what it is and how it's got to be done, or it should be, this is, waits for the final word. But you and I are almost, opposites when it comes to that, but that's been your role. And that's been really hard for me to take that level of feedback from my little brother, when I just, as a visionary, absolutely want to charge ahead in the most painful possible way. That's been a real challenge, and it just, it takes the wind out of your sails. It's not just you guys though too. Like, I'd come to the advisory board, and you're all excited about this stuff, and it's like, oh great, I get to make another PowerPoint presentation. We'll try and ShamWow Larry Hillworth, who's been a corporate banker for 20 years and successfully exited his John Deere business. Like, he doesn't think you're anything special, spread on butter. Like, he's looking at the hard things that he's supposed to be asking. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, to the point where at my unhealthiest, I'd actually avoid those conversations and sort of like barrel off on my own in some trajectory. But now at my healthiest, it's really like, the summation of it, the important summary of it all is like, I don't want to move ahead and make decisions and avoid anymore, because I could be wrong. I've experienced that enough. And it's very painful. And I think one of the hardest things that you guys probably experienced for me in business was seeing me come in. We started out with this hopeful trajectory. I'm sure you could plot it with all entrepreneurs. But at some point, I sort of got a little bit of a Superman syndrome too. And, there was an arrogance, a hubris that was going on. I thought we were going to the moon. I started multiplying this by that. Well, management went out the window, and it was just sort of became this, kamikaze, we're going to the moon, Shark Tank kind of thinking. And unfortunately, I got brought back, I got humbled in a way that is visceral. It's very hard to duplicate that experience in a lab, And so getting through the other side of that has been really valuable. But like I say, I think the most important thing that has been really valuable to me is, as this thing becomes more successful and we actually built something, it's the legacy of the core values that got us there. And now they're up on the wall, and we have employees that write that at the top of their power list every day. Family, extreme value, simplicity, whatever else all the other ones are. Follow through, but a lot of that's like stuff that I remember Dad telling me, and it was the weirdest, simplest thing. I can't remember what we're doing, but I just remember he was giving me shit, which wasn't uncommon. But whether it was carrying chop or whatever. But or maybe it was I was worried about like what I was going to do next in my life or something like that, or I was, you know, asking for advice. But he would say, do what you're doing well, and good things will come. And more that's becoming like a deeper core philosophy. It's just something that I'm experiencing. Let's just focus on doing what we're doing really well, and everything else will come. But for a non-farming sibling who left the farm and really had gotten past the point of any hope of sharing that experience of a family business, to be just catapulted into this opportunity that's had all these highs and lows, but for the most part it's been a huge blessing. And I think this year probably, I don't know, you guys are expanding too, but we're probably going to be bigger than the farm this year in terms of net revenue.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll compare at the end of the year, but that's not really the metric. But it's brought so many opportunities. It's been an opportunity to have these kinds of conversations, you know, to go on future podcasts. It's like our network is expanded by many multiples, you know. I think through the process too, let's be real, like there was a time when we didn't all really get along, and there was reasons that I wasn't around, and it was, you know, especially between me and Dad, and so it's really cool to be here now. I think it's brought us together, and that was one of the first core values we ever had in Aberhart Ag.
Yeah,
I think that's the first thing we wrote at the top of the sheet.
it was.
And I remember it was one of the first things I ever talked about in this shop over there, where we had Elston out, we had 10 farmers, and I don't know, they probably didn't care, but I told them I cared about it. I said, you know, this business we're starting has to enhance our family relationships. Or
Yeah.
it's not, or we can't have it's just purely practical, because we can't have a business if we don't get along. And B, like hopefully at the end of it our relationships will be better. And I feel like that's important, because Dad's not going to live forever. Like, you're not going to be around here forever, and you know we're facing that a little bit with you going into, you know, your surgery. And I know it's no big deal and you're tough like an ox, but you know, it just makes us all think that, you know, nothing's forever. So it was really good for me to have this opportunity to work with you guys that way. It's been awesome. So, and yeah, I think it's timely that we did this, and it's really cool. So I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff ahead yet. There's a long road to hoe yet, but we never know when any of our numbers up. And so I'm glad I got a chance to work with you guys before I die.
Well, that's really cool, because I remember, and of course when you set these goals and you first start out with something, it's all warm and fuzzy, and you know, the opportunities, the horizon, right? And probably a couple years in, when just things were growing right crazy and changing, and the stress and there's probably some moments where we all felt like, I'm not sure this is strengthening our family bonds.
Or it's gonna work.
But you know, a few years later, I think it's been incredible for all of us, especially for me, because you know you've learned a lot, and you know, I always say when there's conflict, it's usually because people are passionate, right? And you and I have very, very similar passion, and there's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities. But you know, I love when you talk about the core values, because it's something that really means a lot to me, and something that I wanted to share as well as, and we all know this, but Dad was just an incredible mentor to all of us growing up, and what I always remember is, and still remember now, is it's hard. I don't know of anyone that I've ever met that would say anything negative about Dad, right? And he worked incredibly hard. People always counted on him. They still do. He's an incredible mediator. He's been an incredible mediator between us at times, an incredible partner, and whether it's on water boards or whatever, he just has this ability where people respect him. He respects other people, and he can solve problems that, you know, two people can't even talk to each other, and he can just figure it out. And all those lessons that we learned really is what I believe has helped make us successful and help me be successful because of those values. And I find myself being really hard on Holden and our family at times, because you know, I want to give our children the same guidance, the same values, because I know if I can do that, they'll have the same success as well. And that's sometimes really hard when, when we're kids, we do stupid things, and we did a lot of stupid things that we shouldn't have. And usually what I always remember about Dad was he was the guy that you would be very scared of if he was angry, very scared of. But if he really, really got into serious trouble, whether it was when we were kids or even in the business too, he would step up with strength and show you the way. And I always remember those things.
Yeah, he taught me that. And I'm actually, I love that when I get to flex those muscles in the company sometimes, because I can go in and I can solve an issue because Dad taught me. I remember when I was first custom spraying for this customer and I wasn't keeping up with his expectations, and he got really excited and stuff, and Dad just came out and pulled up in his half ton and kind of leaned out the window and talked to this guy, and it was incredible. It just completely changed him. This guy was probably going to kick my ass at that point. I was just a punk trying to, fulfill the quota there for acres in a day, and things weren't going good because I was smashing my booms into trees and stuff, and it's falling off. But yeah, those are life skills. So I don't know. It's good to be able to go forward with those skills.
Yeah, the other thing I've just kind of realized this now in the last few years, but in business, and we're just learning this now as we're going through this process in all of our companies, right? It's the entrepreneurial operating system, right, by Gino Wickman. And one of the most transformational concepts there is in every business you have a visionary, right? And you, Dan and I are both visionaries. And when you put two visionaries together, only one vision can work, right? And so that can be really difficult. But the key to any true visionary success, right? It's the Steve Jobs and Wozniak, right? It's the McDonald's guy and whoever it was, right? But is the integrator, and the integrator is that person that maybe doesn't have the same vision and grand ideas and ShamWow, but they make sure the vision happens. And so as we've been going through this and our companies are growing, we're trying to implement the right integrators in our business. What I realized is that Dad was my integrator for all of our life, and together between the two of us, talking through this podcast today too, right? He didn't maybe have the passion and the vision, but he sure knew how to get it done. And I didn't know how to get it done, but I had a lot of passion and vision, and together we built everything that's here. And now I'm trying to, replace that just so Dad can spend more time riding on his Harley and doesn't have to work so hard and reap the benefits of his labor. But I need like 2 or 3 people to replace what he did, right?
Yeah.
And what we did together. And so that's just something that's been really cool, and I'm just so grateful for. And I didn't realize that's why it worked so good, but Dad's the most amazing integrator I've ever known or been able to work with, and I've just been incredibly honored to have that opportunity, and it's given me a lot of confidence to continue to move forward, and a lot of pride to build on the legacy and the reputation that he built in his life. And I just hope that I can live up to the same kind of standards and reputation that he's created in his life and career. So
You're doing great. You're doing great, Terry.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
Final thoughts. I think I'm all talked out. What do you think, Holden?
I'm all talked out too.
You didn't even say anything.
what do you think?
You're all listened to.
You think,
Yeah,
you think
I'm
we're
all
going to be able
listening.
to
I don't want to listen to this anymore.
run the farm with Aislinn or Serica or somebody like that,
I don't think Aislinn or Serica will want to run the farm, at all.
What if they do? You just said you're the doer, so are you gonna
I
be
guess-
the integrator and pair up with an amazing visionary?
What's your Colby?
I don't know. You have to ask Dad.
He's in transition.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Holden, before we wrap this sucker up?
Good job.
Golf clap. Well, we'll give the final word to you, Harvey.
Oh yeah, well, I guess it's been good, and it's a good opportunity for us to get together and share some of the things that we've done over the years. Some of them I forgot about, or
Or tried to forget about.
Tried to forget
but
about,
yeah, it's
PTSD.
been a great opportunity to get together with you guys, and appreciate the comments, and really glad to have Holden here too with us, and looking forward to him taking over some of my duties as we progress.